From his impassioned writings against the institution of slavery in his paper The Liberator, to his dramatic public spectacles, including burning the U.S. Constitution, William Lloyd Garrison put his life on the line for the abolitionist cause. William Lloyd Garrison was born in Newburyport, Massachusetts, on a cold December day in 1805. His father, a mariner, soon hit hard times and fell into alcoholism, leaving his family to fend for themselves. His mother had gotten swept up in the Baptist revivals of the time and instilled in her son William a strong religious faith and a sense of responsibility to his fellow humans. In 1818, Garrison, barely a teen, was offered an apprenticeship at the Newburyport Herald. For the young man, the opportunity to work in a newspaper was a dream come true, following in the footsteps of his hero Benjamin Franklin. The paper's editor, Ephraim Allen, instilled in Garrison the virtues of hard work and the moral responsibility of his vocation, working from the premise that an independent press is the surest safeguard of freedom. In 1826, Allen relinquished control of the paper to Garrison, and the young man renamed it the Free Press. But after only 6 months, Garrison and Allen had a falling out, and Allen demanded repayment of his loans to the young editor, most likely causing Garrison to sell the paper. Seeking more robust opportunities, Garrison moved to Boston, the heart of the printing trade. He worked odd jobs for various printing shops before securing an editorial position at The Philanthropist. Garrison was already starting to get away from partisan politics when he met Benjamin Lundy, a Quaker harness maker and staunch abolitionist. Lundy worked to raise money to publish his protest to the slave trade in his one-man newspaper, The Genius of Universal Emancipation. In conversations with Garrison, Lundy described his experiences witnessing firsthand the cruelty of slavery. "Lundy opened my eyes," said Garrison, "and inflamed my mind." He partnered up with Lundy to run the paper, but by 1830, unable to get adequate donors and subscriptions, the paper went under. With a strong sense of mission, Garrison was not to be deterred, and so he managed to get new donors to launch his own abolitionist publication, The Liberator, a paper that would make him one of the leading voices in the movement. With renewed fire, Garrison promised to make slaveholders and their apologists tremble. About slavery, Garrison said he did not wish to think or speak or write with moderation. "Tell a man whose house is on fire to give a moderate alarm, but urge me not to use moderation in a cause like the present. I am in earnest. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will not retreat a single inch, and I will be heard." As much as Garrison was a brave and outspoken abolitionist, he was also a man given to bouts of sadness, loneliness, and insecurity. Having failed at previous attempts at courtship and approaching his 30s, he met the soft-spoken Helen Benson. Helen provided for him the support, warmth, and security he needed to ground him in a world which was oftentimes hostile to his views. The couple exchanged vows in the fall of 1834, and Helen would provide for him the quiet, loving, and supportive home life he needed to weather the storms to come. Garrison had already been on the receiving end of numerous assassination threats, but in the following year, at a meeting of the Boston Female Anti-Slavery Society, an angry mob showed up, preventing the assembly. Howls from the mob to lynch Garrison rang out. One even suggested to turn him a right nigger to tar. Fortunately, the mayor distracted the mob, instructing the sheriff to tell them a search of the premises uncovered no sign of Garrison, while secretly he was given escape out a back alley. Some 6 years later, Garrison would meet a fellow escapee, a fugitive slave by the name of Frederick Douglas. During the 3-day Nantucket Convention, at the close of the second day, Douglas summoned up the courage to speak of his experiences as a slave. Although trembling and awkward, Douglas's story held the audience spellbound. Seeing the uniqueness and power of the ex-slave's delivery, Garrison pressed Douglas to be a regular speaker and made him an agent of the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society. While many thought slavery was an evil institution, they were also willing to make several compromises in the belief that slavery would slowly fall away over time. Garrison emphasized the urgency of the situation, pointing out the horrors and atrocities which decent people should no longer tolerate. He also realized that such compromises were baked into the U.S. Constitution itself. How could we as a nation say on one hand that all men were created equal, and then count Negroes as 3/5 of a human being, or consider our fellow human beings as property to be bought, exploited in every way, and sold? In the 1850s, the Fugitive Slave Law said that slaves who had escaped their masters in slave states could be retrieved in non-slave states to be returned to captivity. In response, on 1/4 of July, Garrison held up a copy of the Fugitive Slave Law and set it ablaze. Then, holding up a copy of the U.S. Constitution, he set it on fire, pronouncing it the source and parent of the other atrocities, and exclaiming to the crowd, "So perish all compromises with tyranny." As he burned the Constitution, the audience responded with a mix of applause and hisses. In 1859, John Brown and a small militia attacked a federal armory in hopes to start a nationwide slave revolt at Harper's Ferry. Not one to shy away from controversy, in reporting the incident, Garrison said of John Brown, "In firing his gun, he has merely told us what time of day it is. It is high noon, thank God." Besides having serious reservations about the U.S. Constitution, Garrison was highly skeptical about partisan politics and found it difficult to support even Lincoln in the Republican Party. Garrison was especially put off when Lincoln, in one famous speech, said he would willingly free the slaves or keep them in bondage if it would save the Union. But in the midst of the Civil War, the president happily surprised the abolitionists with his Emancipation Proclamation. With Lincoln's statement and the admission of 100,000 black Union soldiers to the field, the war had been given its higher purpose. Garrison, by then, had all but proclaimed himself to be a Republican. He had accurately sensed the direction the new party was making. Soon, the Republican-controlled Senate both repealed the Fugitive Slave Law and approved a draft of the 13th Amendment to free all of the slaves, not just the ones in the Confederate States. In 1865, when the actor John Wilkes Booth heard Lincoln call for Negro suffrage, Booth declared, "That is the last speech he will ever make." Tragically, Booth made good on that declaration when he shot the president in cold blood at Ford's Theater. Garrison, who had long been critical of the president, said Lincoln had grown in grace and knowledge, and that he was an instrument in the hand of God to bring about great and glorious ends. Having felt that his main objectives had been fulfilled with the freeing of the slaves, Garrison started to withdraw from the political arena. He resolved to keep his paper, The Liberator, going just long enough to report the passing of the 13th Amendment. Announcing its passage, he wrote, "At last the old covenant with death is annulled. Hail redeemed, regenerated America. Hail the cause of liberty, of peace, of righteousness. Hail ye ransomed millions. Hail all nations, tribes, kindreds and peoples of one blood. Hail angels in glory and spirits of the just made perfect, and tune your harps anew, singing great and marvelous are thy works, Lord God Almighty." Despite putting the paper to rest and slowing down his activities a bit, Garrison still supported the radical Republicans in their passing of the 14th Amendment, granting male Negro suffrage. He came into a bit of an argument with Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who felt strongly that by specifying the word male in the amendment, it was a step backward. But Garrison, who was a steadfast supporter of women's suffrage, felt that it was too much to ask of society to simultaneously pass both Negro and female suffrage in one amendment. Unlike his previous attitudes towards slavery, he was a gradualist when it came to women getting the right to vote. By the time the 15th Amendment was ratified in 1870, Garrison turned down an offer to meet in a celebration of the event, claiming that citizenship should have been granted 5 years ago. Garrison likely agreed with Wendell Phillips that their task was at an end as far as the law can accomplish it. Being that Garrison had been working aggressively toward Negro emancipation, suffrage, and their citizenship rights for decades, he was likely feeling the need to wind things down and rest in his accomplishments. It was not unusual for Garrison to be stopped by an admirer, such as one black man from Charleston who reported being reunited with his daughter again because of the abolitionist years at the press and bully pulpit. On a personal level, the 1870s would prove to be a difficult time for Garrison, as he was continuously attending one funeral after another of good friends and family members. Of his own passing, Garrison resolved he would meet the inevitable hour with gratitude to the divine being for the life I have here enjoyed, and with unquestioning faith and lively hope as to the life to come. His wife Helen had recently suffered a number of small strokes. In January of 1876, she caught cold and was bedridden. As she slipped in and out of consciousness, Garrison stood by her bedside, fanning her brow and gently stroking her. She passed on the morning of January 25th. Despite enduring a variety of ailments and grieving the death of his wife Helen, Garrison managed to rally again. He wrote several public letters, some protesting the Compromise of 1877, in which federal troops were withdrawn from the South in exchange for making Republican Rutherford B. Hayes president after a contested election. The 1877 Compromise signaled the end of the Reconstruction era, allowing Southern leaders to revert back to their old ways of white supremacy. Reverberating his earlier words about the original Constitution, Garrison called the compromise a covenant with death. In one letter, Garrison said it is clear that the battle for liberty and equal rights is to be fought over again. And indeed, it would take nearly another 100 years before voting rights were re-secured for blacks during the Johnson administration, through the persistent efforts of Martin Luther King Jr. and many others during the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Sadly, Garrison's compounding health issues of rheumatism, bladder and kidney issues, and swollen legs all conspired to immobilize him. While he laid in bed, he had a number of admiring and appreciative visitors. At one point, his daughter Fanny asked him if he would like to sing some hymns, and he said he would. So Garrison and his 5 children joined him singing with tears of love in their eyes. On May 24, 1879, Garrison slipped into a coma and passed away an hour before midnight. In Boston and throughout Massachusetts, flags flew at half-staff in mourning for the great abolitionist. Few people in the political arena or in the annals of print journalism could claim to have played such a prominent role in the freeing of millions of enslaved people. William Lloyd Garrison was a man of conviction, bravery, compassion, and empathy. He dedicated and even risked his life so that others could be free and enjoy the inalienable rights promised them in the Declaration of Independence. If you'd like to see more of these American biographies, click the subscribe button below. By doing so, you'll enable us to make more and better quality videos in the future. Thank you.